Okay, welcome to Community CPA's Saturday webinar. Our Saturday webinar ordinarily is our firm CEO Yin Da's showtime, but from time to time, myself or some other partners of the firm would fill in for her, and today is one of such occasions. So I'll be the speaker today. So I'll be talking about a new IRS moratorium that was issued about 2 days ago, which temporarily suspended the processing of new ERC claims. So many of you probably have heard of that IRS moratorium already. So we are going to take a closer look of that moratorium and also try to discuss the impact of that moratorium on the past, pending, and the future ERC claims. Right, so let me quickly share screen. Okay, so as I just mentioned, we'll be talking about the new IRS moratorium that suspended the processing of new ERC claims. And also we'll be discussing the impact of that moratorium on the ERC claim that's already, you already received the credit, or you have an ERC claim that's pending with IRS, or if you believe you're eligible and you still want to file a ERC claim. A quick disclaimer. So basically, if you are just listening and try to do things on your own, that does not form a client relationship with a community CPA, so we would not be responsible for any damages resulting from your own undertaking. Right, so we would welcome people to contact to become our clients if you need specific services. All right, so quick few words about our firm. So we are a regional CPA firm with 3 offices, one in Des Moines, one in the Coralville, Iowa City area, and also another one in the Minneapolis, Bloomington area that's in Ave, Minnesota. And so we provide a full suite of CPA services from accounting, tax, payroll, and to financial statement audit, and we also provide the business and the legal advisory services. And we do have a licensed attorney on staff. All right, so let's go to the topic of the day. So that is about the new IRS moratorium that was issued on September 14th. Okay, these are screenshots of the IRS announcement. Okay, so this is from the IRS website. So there's a big heading and subheadings. So from those headings, we can quickly tell what is prompting IRS to do this, to issue this moratorium, and what other actions IRS has taken or is taking. Right, so first of all, the reason why IRS is doing this is IRS is seeing a surge of questionable claims. And then IRS believe that's related to aggressive marketing by certain promoters. So basically, they would disregard the eligibility, and they just, basically whoever they can convince to go with them. So they would help those people or employers apply for ERC regardless of their eligibility, and perhaps also regardless of the rules about the calculations of the ERC. And so that's the reason behind IRS moratorium. So they're seeing a surge of questionable or dubious claims. So IRS is concerned about that and the impact of that on the entire tax system and the risk that posed to the taxpayers and the businesses. And so IRS ordered immediate stop on the processing of new ERC claims. Okay, I want to stress the word processing here because that I will discuss a little later. So there's a difference between the stopping the processing and stop the acceptance altogether. So everywhere you'll see that in the moratorium, so it's a word processing that's used. Okay, so IRS stopped processing of new ERC claims. All right. So, and the moratorium also discussed, I guess, also stated about what the IRS is doing with the pending ERC claims. Okay, and also in the same announcement, you will see what IRS is recommending to people and about future claims, and also what the safety net IRS is putting into place. All right, so quick summary or some of the details from the moratorium. So number one, IRS temporarily suspended the processing of a new ERC claim through at least the end of this year. And the pending ERC claims, they will still be processed at IRS, but with increased scrutiny. So to detect fraud or other, ineligible claims. So because of the higher scrutiny, so the processing time will be longer. So right now it's, I guess the IRS has cut down its processing time to about 90 days, which is considered normal the processing time frame for just about any 941 amendment. And so that processing time will likely be 180 days or more. And it's also possible some of the employers who made a claim with pending claims may be required to submit additional supporting documentation. All right, so IRS is conducting audit and investigation of certain fraudulent claims, and also IRS is coming up with some programs that will allow employers with a pending claim to withdraw the ERC claims if they determine the pending ERC claim is not eligible, okay, or is not properly filed. And also, IRS is also coming up with a program that allows employers who already received ERC claims, but now the employers determined to be improper, and so IRS would allow those employers to repay the ERC back, and also, basically some sort of repayment and settlement programs. So the details about those programs are forthcoming. So all of these are in the IRS moratorium. So it's not just a simple suspension of the processing of a new ERC claims, but there are a lot more about it. And also, I did say a few words about the new claims. Okay, so IRS is by temporarily suspending the processing of the new claims, so that would allow IRS to add new safety net onto the program to allow IRS to better detect ineligible claims or fraudulent claims. And also, IRS does have some recommendations in that announcement. So regarding both the past, pending, and the future ERC claims. So we'll get into that a little later. I'll get some more details about that later. All right, so this moratorium might seem to be a bombshell to many. Okay, they just all of a sudden the IRS just dropped a bombshell. But if you have been following IRS's announcement closely, so then you would see that it's not so surprising. So IRS may have had even earlier warnings than October 2022, but I just did a quick search, so this actually we knew about. We were looking at last year already. So IRS did have a number of warnings already in the beginning 2022. For instance, it's October 19, 2022. So IRS now, warned that want employers to be aware of third party promoting improper ERC claims. And then in November 2022, in one of those COVID tax tips, so IRS, besides issuing that same warning, also listed many official resources from the IRS. Okay, so these are IRS notices or IRS revenue procedures. And so these are the official guidance for the ERC programs at IRS. Okay, so and in particular, there are those 4 notices: 2021-20, -23, -49, and -65. Okay, so these were issued when the ERC law was evolving. Okay, so for example, that 2020 was addressing the 2020 ERC, and later that the 2020 ERC was extended to the first 2 quarters in 21. So this 2021-23 addresses how to claim the additional 2 quarters in 21. And then there are some further details that IRS clarified in the 49, as well as when the Congress added 2 more quarters onto the 2021 ERC. So that's the third and fourth quarter. So IRS came up with the 2021-49 notice, and then eventually the Congress repealed the fourth quarter ERC under the first 2 criteria. That's the government COVID order or the gross receipts decline. Those 2 criteria. Okay, so the Congress repealed the fourth quarter, and then IRS came up with a corresponding notice to address that issue. Address that repeal. All right. So basically, as early as November 2022, so IRS was already, reminding people of those official resources instead of just a word of mouth by some promoters. And into 2023, so IRS back in March, and again issued a warning against the fraudulent or improper ERC claims, and also did announce that the IRS was increasing scrutiny following aggressive promoters, basically following aggressive promoters marketing. And this seemed to be a turning point at IRS in July. So in July, on July 21st, IRS issued a memo regarding the supply chain criteria that many people were fighting ERC, relying on the supply chain disruptions to file their ERC claims. So in this July 21st memo by IRS Chief Attorney, so basically in that memo, IRS analyzed the 5 scenarios, all related to the supply chain as the basis for ERC claim. So the conclusion from those analyses, it basically was that the supply chain disruptions in general, they do not qualify an employer for the ERC. Okay, so there's got to be more to just the supply chain disruptions in order for an employer to be able to claim the ERC, to be eligible to claim the ERC. And so, in July, so there are more warnings in July. So, and then on July 24th, for example, so again, so IRS tax tips 2023-93. So IRS listed some warning signs about the ERC scam. And on July 26th, IRS made the following announcement. Okay, so the backlog, ERC backlog, had been eliminated, and additional procedures will be put in place. That's the July 26th announcement. And in fact, the IRS called that to be a new phase. Right. Some more details about the IRS July 26th announcement. So the first one, as I just mentioned, so IRS eliminated backlog. So basically, the processing time for ERC claims were reduced to about 90 days. That, as I mentioned earlier, that you should consider that to be a normal processing time frame for any 941 amendment, not just ERC, but for any ERC, for any 941 amendment. So that's like a normal processing time frame. But in that July 26th announcement, IRS was already saying, so they are seeing a big influx of new filings. And of course, on the September 14 announcement, the IRS is calling the big influx of filings to be a tsunami of new filings. Okay, so that gives you a level of, give you a scale of the problem that the IRS is seeing. All right, and so in July, IRS, after eliminating the backlog, so IRS entered into a new phase. So IRS has intensified compliance work to make sure all the claims are are filed and also are processed in compliance with all the rules and regulations. And IRS had put into place additional procedures to deal with fraud, and IRS trained their auditors to identify questionable and fraudulent claims, and also IRS also involved their criminal investigation department or criminal investigation division, and to work on identifying fraud and identifying promoters of fraudulent claims. All right, so the promoters, the misleading marketing was a big concern for IRS. So IRS felt their hands were somewhat tied, I believe. So IRS in that July 26th announcement, it also mentioned the IRS was making an effort to get the Congress help to increase IRS power to oversee return preparers, and IRS would like to see earlier ending dates for the ERC programs. Earlier than the April 15, 24 or the April 15, 25 deadlines, and that's considered the standard deadline. So April 15, 24, that's a deadline for the 2020 ERC, and April 15, 2025, that's a deadline for the 2021 ERC. So these are the regular deadlines according to the current law and rules. But IRS, even back in July, was already seeking an earlier termination date than that. All right, and so now, after those, after recalling those sequence of IRS announcements, so it shouldn't be too surprising that on July 14th, IRS came up with those moratorium, so that temporarily suspended the processing of new ERC claims. Okay, and so this is like repeating a couple of those things are repeating what I talked about earlier. So now we're going to then talk more about this moratorium. Okay, so the first thing is, of course, IRS temporarily suspended processing of new ERC claims. And so the pending ERC claims will be processed with increased scrutiny. So that means 180 days or longer. And IRS may send claimants a request for additional information. So I'm just borrowing the immigration office's terminology. Immigration office like to issue requests for evidence. So just for some places, I just use that RFE in this case as well. So IRS may issue RFE for some of the ERC claims that are pending. All right, so in that moratorium announcement, I also mentioned that thousands of ERC claims have been referred for audit. So in the next several weeks, I would expect some of the some of the taxpayers who filed the ERC claim would be seeing audit notices. And there were hundreds of criminal cases are being worked at IRS. And so there were already charges, federal charges being laid on some of the ERC claimants already. Okay, so IRS even gave some numbers. So there were 252 investigations as of July 31st, and then 15 of the 252 investigations back then led to federal charges. All right, again, so on the IRS and September 14 moratorium announcement, says the IRS also made some recommendations to businesses that either filed ERC claims or are considering to file ERC claims. So first of all, okay, I guess, again, so using my title of the talk today, so IRS is talking about what to do, for the past, pending, and the future ERC claims. Okay, so for example, first of all, for the past one, which means if you have received ERC credit already, but now if you believe it was claimed in error, and then IRS will be setting up a repayment settlement program, so that will allow those employers to repay the ERC back and basically enter into that settlement. So the details are coming. So as per IRS announcement, so those you do need to wait a little bit for IRS details and on how you can do that. All right, if you have a pending ERC claim, and you should carefully review the rules. By the way, these are all IRS recommendations. Okay, so if you have a pending ERC claim, you should carefully review the rules and guidelines, and if you determine that your claim was improper, so then you should consider withdrawing. Okay, for example, if your claim were based on supply chain disruptions, so as IRS has determined back in July already, so in most cases, okay, so I wouldn't say 100%, but so maybe 90, even more than 90% of the cases, supply chain disruptions, and supply chain disruptions alone, that would not qualify you for ERC as IRS had analyzed back in July. Okay, so if you're in one of those situations, so then you should consider withdraw the ERC claims that are pending. And again, so IRS will be announcing details about how you can do that withdrawal. And so if you're considering filing new ERC claims, and then before you file, you should carefully review the rules and guidelines during the moratorium period. So this, I actually kind of think IRS is implying don't submit during that moratorium period. Okay, so you should carefully review the rules and guidelines during the moratorium period. These are exact words from the IRS announcement. Okay, so all right, so we're going to come back to that issue a little later. And also, on the same date as the issuance of a moratorium, IRS also updated to ERC web pages. So IRS has those ERC web pages with Q&As. So, for example, some of those Q&As were updated or added back in July, and we actually had a webinar. We talked about that. Okay, and then there are many that were dated to September 14th. So these were either newly added or newly updated. of the existing Q&As. For example, you see on this one screenshot, we see several. Okay, so under this category of qualifying government orders, and so this one is added September 14, that's September 14, September 14, September 14, and also the supply chain issue, and IRS also updated. I think most of these were updated on September 14 rather than newly added. Okay, so if you check the July ones, I think most of those were there, and those were probably just updated. Okay. Well, maybe I should take it back. So IRS did make a distinction between updated and added. Okay, some of these are updated, and some of these are added on the particular days. For example, this was added July, so there was no change to that, and this is added on July 14th. All right, so if you were going to check on the current rules and regulations, so don't forget to also check on ERC web pages at irs.gov. And here at Community CPA, so in light of this moratorium, we also have some additional recommendations. So if you have received ERC already, or if you have pending ERC claims, so following IRS's recommendation that you should review the guidelines and the rules. So if you don't quite think you understand or you fully understand the rules and regulations, and then you should seek qualified tax professionals' help to help you to understand the rules and guidelines, and also to get help to analyze your particular situation and determine whether you truly are eligible or not. And if you do determine that you were ineligible for the ERC claims, then you should consider withdrawing, or if you already received the ERC credits, then you should consider repaying. Okay, but whether it's repaying or repayment at this time, so IRS does not have the detailed instructions yet, so we do still need to wait for further IRS instructions. And if you have received ERC and you determine that you truly were eligible for the credit, okay, in other words, your claims were proper, so and don't just leave it alone, okay? So there is one more thing you need to do if you have not done it yet. So you are required to go back to amend the income tax returns, the business income tax return, and in some cases, it's going to be both the business and the personal income tax returns for the 2 years, for the two underlying years, which is 2020 and 2021. Okay, so ERC, roughly speaking, is considered a taxable income. So you need to report that taxable income on the tax returns for year 2020 if you claim 2020 ERC, or on your income tax return for 2021 if you claim 2021 ERC. And of course, so I just say that ERC roughly is a taxable income, but the way you do it on tax return is actually you don't just add that onto the top line. Okay, you don't just add that onto your income. Instead, you reduce your payroll expense. Okay, so which would have the same effect as you add the into the top line. Okay, so you reduce the expense, or you add the income, and they will have the same effect on the net income, which is what really matters in terms of tax calculations. All right, but anyway, so if you have not amended your business tax returns and personal and the related personal tax returns for 2020 and or 2021, and it's time to do that now. If you have received ERC credit and have determined those claims were proper. All right, so then what about you still haven't got around to file your claim, but you truly believe you are eligible. Okay, and as a matter of fact, we still run into clients. They just didn't know about this. They either didn't know about this program at all, or they didn't think they were eligible, but when in fact they actually were eligible. And such as, they had sales drop in 2020, and then maybe they thought, okay, for all quarters, they need to have a 50% drop. They only had a one quarter with 50% drop. And then they thought, after PVP and all that, and there may be not much left, so it's not worth the trouble to file a 2020 ERC claim. So because they didn't know about all the detailed rules, we actually have clients like that. We also have clients that were formed in 2020 or 2021. And they knew they were not eligible for PVP, or they were not eligible for EIDL. They thought they missed everything, okay, all the government, the ERC, the government COVID programs, and without realizing they actually legitimately claim ERC for the 2 quarters, for the 3rd and 4th quarters of 2021. So we actually are still, running into clients of that type. All right, so there are still employers out there who truly are eligible for ERC, and for a variety of reasons, they haven't filed the claim yet. So what can those employers do? Can they still file it now? Okay, earlier I kept on emphasizing the word processing. Okay, so in IRS moratorium, IRS was using the word they stopped or halted the processing of new ERC claims. Nowhere was mentioned the acceptance or filing. So in other words, we believe that the IRS may still be accepting new ERC claims, and they just won't be processing them until at least after the end of the year. So if you're in that situation, because in a situation where you truly believe you are eligible for the ERC, but you haven't filed yet, and now it's time to file still, I believe. Okay, and so we might be a little too optimistic. So, but our optimism wasn't purely just a guess, or just trying to interpret IRS's wording in the moratorium announcement. So we actually have some basis. Okay, so IRS, 941X is not just for ERC claims. So 941X, that's a form for amendment of a variety of payroll errors, payroll report errors. So we actually, from time to time, we do run payrolls for clients. So from time to time, we had the need to do a 941 amendment for non-ERC related reasons. And so the normal deadline for filing a 941X for a 941 that's already filed is 3 years from the time of the original 941 filing. Okay, so but the 3 years counting is actually not the actual date you filed, but it's considered the succeeding April 15th. Okay, so that's the reason why ERC has those weird. You might think these are weird deadlines. Okay, so these really are just regular deadlines for 941X filings. Okay, so they're not specifically for ERC. So the April 15, 2024, that's the filing deadline for 941X to make any corrections for 2020, for year 2020 941. Okay, so that would, of course, including the 2020 ERC claims. And likewise, so April 15, 2025, that's the filing deadline for 941X. And if you were, you need to correct any errors on your 941 filing for 2021, for any quarter in 2021. Okay. Because those 949X are well established, and so and they're not just limited to ERC, but in general. So I think IRS cannot just stop accepting 949X findings altogether. So will IRS make a distinction at their acceptance station to separate out the 941X with the ERC claim, or the other, the regular 941X findings? So we don't know, but there's a good chance that IRS is not going to do that. So they would still just accept 941X. Okay, so IRS has issued warning. So the words are out there. So IRS is looking, or is scrutinizing ERC claims very carefully. So hopefully that those announcements or words are enough to scare those employers who are ineligible for the program to even file the claim. So, and then those who truly are eligible but haven't filed, and I believe those should be accepted by IRS, despite IRS can take their time to process those filings. And also, last piece of information. So even if the IRS actually halted the acceptance altogether, okay, not just the processing, but even the acceptance, okay, so which of course would require us to distinguish at the acceptance station the 941X with the ERC claim or other 941X. So then IRS may still have to reopen the acceptance of a new ERC claims before the deadline, April 15, 2024. Okay, so hopefully shortly after December 31st, so IRS will reopen if IRS has actually halted acceptance of 941X with ERC claims. All right, because otherwise, so IRS, if IRS, stop accepting and it keeps on doing that, keeps on if the moratorium is extended all the way to April 15, 24, and they don't even accept any ERC claims. So then effectively, IRS is rewriting the law about the ERC program. Okay, so only Congress had that power. So unless the Congress passes a new law to end the ERC programs sooner, IRS may have to reopen acceptance. Okay, so if you're in that category, and if it does turn out that IRS has stopped accepting the ERC claims, even if you truly are eligible, so then you should keep a close eye on the on IRS announcement for the reopening of acceptance. All right, so earlier I mentioned that April 15th is the cutoff for filing 941X amendment in general, okay, not just ERC, but for filing 941X. Okay, so that April 15th date is defined, you can find this on the 941X instructions. So these are screenshots from the 941X instructions. So the April 15th is considered the filing date for all 941, even if your actual filing date was earlier than that. In general, your actual filing date is earlier than April 15 of the succeeding year. Okay, for example, use 2023 as an example. We already had two full quarters already. So the first quarter, if you're in the first quarter, 941 was due in April, and the second quarter 941 was due in July. And probably 95% of the employers have already filed their 941 for the first quarter and second quarter of 2023. But for 941X purposes, if you were to file an amendment to your 941 And if you need to determine your deadline for the filing, and your filing date is actually going to be April 15. It's going to be considered, okay? Your filing date is actually going to be considered April 15 of 2024, okay? For all quarters in 2023, the filing date for determining the deadline for 941X purposes is April 15, 2024, okay? That's the succeeding year of 2023, okay? All right. I think that would conclude my webinar today. So if you have any further questions, you can send an email to our general email address, kathleen@communitycp.com, or you can call in at our main number, 515-288-3188. We are open Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week, from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. at the Central Time. We have 3 offices, but we are all 3 offices are Central Time. All right, and then you can also go to our webpage, communitycpa.com, to find out more information about our firm, and also you can check on our announcement of forthcoming webinars. All right, thank you for listening and watching. See you next time.